I'm a fighter. I'm a boxer. I've always claimed to be a boxer. My name is Golden Boy, and my father was an elite fighter, and he would give me the most inspirational quote you've ever heard.
But I am no celebrity. People mistake me for a celebrity. I break people's faces for money and bounce.
But soon, he would run into the wrong person, and my father would fall victim to not fist, but gun.
Who the fuck is that guy? Who the fuck is that?
At that time, I told my father I didn't know who the fuck that guy was. But I told him I'd be a fighter, a boxer, better than even him. So that's what I did. So this was day one of my journey. Day one of my journey in Punch Club. Or at least that's what they call this damn place. I picked up my phone and I was told that I should get off my lazy ass and get to work. My boy's Frank. Frank's real. Frank's the homie. And I knew that I had to figure out whatever I needed to figure out in this world. So that's exactly what I did. I did some push-ups, sit-ups, and I drank plenty of juice. But that did not prepare me for the street fight that I was about to be thrown into. Because I might have called myself a fighter. 40-0 in the streets. But this big fat dude gave me my first loss. After getting beat senseless by this big roadie type of dude, I actually was met by an actual trainer. And his name's Mick. Pretty cool. I mean, I met him. I met some other people as well. Met my sparring partner for the future. And I met a couple people as well. But it led me to the gym. And I knew that it all relied on this. It all relied on me working hard. And yeah, day one, it was pretty eventful. All the way up until day 5, I continued my training. I continued working on my stamina. I felt like that was probably the best way to go. But during this time, I just worked hard, worked out, and just kept training, and more training. And eventually, it led me to day 6. And now day 6 is what really, really changed everything, because I had my first very fight on day 6. My first fight was a simple one. All I knew was I was going to outwork this dude. All I knew was I was going to out-stamina him. So I came in with a game plan, and I executed that game plan, and I butchered his bloody face off. And that was the goal, and that's how the fight ended, by KO. I kept up with my training, my sparring, and my working all the way up until day 8. Then I came across this briefcase. I saw it before, but I was kind of an idiot, so I didn't know how it worked. But this time around, I checked it out, and it was actually telling me to go to the grocery store. So I went there, and I realized that it was actually completely ransacked, or at least partially. It seems like all they did was rob the fat cat food, which was weird, but it must be a burglary. I mean, I have to keep this in mind for future reference, especially in the future. Maybe I can fight and beat up some baddies. You never really know. Day 9, I fought my next opponent, and I took him down. But I'm not gonna lie to you, I may have outworked him. But that win, I was feeling the effects afterwards. But that's all good. I knew I had to get better, had to get stronger, and I had to learn new techniques. After a couple more days of training, I actually decided on day 11 I would take on my first ultimate fight. Did it go well? Definitely not. My stamina, my endurance, and stuff like that was better than a bunch of other people's, but I realized that I lacked a ton of skill. At the end of the day, that's majorly what I lacked, and I fell really far behind in this fight against this dude, and it ended up leading to me losing, unfortunately. And even coming up on day 12, I had another fight. And this was in the rookie league, or in the regular league that I'm in. And, well, I lost that fight too. And it kind of put me down a little bit, but at the same time, I love this. This is fighting. I love fighting. And this is just going to make me even better. I got back into the gym all the way up until day 18, because I knew when I got back in that ring, when I got back in that squared circle, I wanted to get a W. That's what I needed. So when I hopped in the ring the very next time, I went all out. I upgraded my stamina, my agility, and that's kind of the pathway that I would eventually go down, that more of that agile style. and at least I have a bit of a more understanding how to train my own body, which I really should know how to because it is literally my body. With that said, I dominated in this next fight, and I made it look easy. A lot easier than I ever have against this guy named like Hector Lomachenko, but I swore Lomachenko was some pro boxer, but that's beyond the point. With all that said, this fight ended in a KO. After the fight, and actually still on day 18, this guy named Roy came up to me and, well, he wanted to hang out. He said that I was awesome, the fight was sick, and that he wanted to actually go hit the bars with me. So as a celebration, I decided to do just that. Later in day 18, I actually met a new person. He said something about some laser that he was working on. Honestly, I don't know much about it, and I don't need to worry about it that much either. But with all that said, I kind of just went on with my day. Going into day 19, though, actually toward the end, after a bit of training, I actually ran into something quite odd. And that would be some robbers, actually. And this robber was trying to rob my local market. And this homie, yeah, that market, those are my boys. That's my boy. He gives me steaks, he gives me pizza, all that stuff. So I knew I had to shut it down ASAP. So for the sake of my homie, I put the volume on this dude. I started putting the hands on him. Boom, boom, left, right, overhand, counter, bang. You know what I'm saying? And I absolutely put in that work and destroyed him. I mean, a little bit of more effort for me, you know, but I like fighting, so it was enjoyable. And my boy was like, hey, you're my hero. I appreciate that. You're the mighty warrior. And I was like, I got you. Are you going to give me free food now? And he's like, hell no. I still got a business to run. And I'm like, fair enough. But all good. And that was the end of day 19. From day 20 to 21, I continued just training and working and doing as much as possible. At the end of the day, I was still broke as hell, so I needed as much money as possible, but I also needed to make sure I was up at the top of my game so I could be ready for these next fights. Unfortunately, though, I wouldn't be ready for this dude by the name of Gordon, because Gordon would put the absolute mitts on me and give me a terrible defeat. And after that, well, I was questioning everything. But then something in the back of my head told me that I couldn't just give up. Something in the back of my head told me that I really still needed to be the greatest. But even my trainer was talking about how he wanted to give me some special something. I don't know what that means. And I'm probably going to stay far away from that because at the end of the day, I don't want to mess with anything that would get me disqualified or make me less of a fighter. But after this conversation about using this so-called magic, I spent the next 10 days, yeah, you got that right, 10 days just straight up training, working, and just trying to basically grow my skills to the maximum I possibly could. Because at the end of the day, I knew I wasn't ready, and I knew I wasn't ready for some crazy fights, especially the ones that I basically will have to do up and coming. I knew I had to hone my skills to a certain extent, and I knew I needed to start focusing on certain aspects of my game and become a true, more or less organized specialist. So all the way up until day 31, I basically just full on trained, worked, slept, repeat the entire way through. The entire time. That's all I did. Midway through day 31, though, I decided, you know what? I'm gonna go help these people that have been calling my line this entire time, talking about they need a hero, something, and about some crazy, weird mutant turtle. I'm not so sure about all that, but I was like, you know what? All right, I don't know if it's a turtle, a pig, a muskrat. Honestly, not even sure, but I'm still gonna be here to run the hands, and I felt confident. Honestly, I really did. I thought, you know what? I got this. I'm about to throw the hands and I'm about to mess this dude up. Oh God, how wrong I was. Oh God, I was really wrong. I mean, at the end of the day, this guy looked absolutely terrifying. I thought it was going to be some, guy dressed up in a suit. Nah, it was like an actual mutant. And it was ripped to shreds. I thought I was strong. I thought I was ripped. I thought I was fit. But I was wrong. And this guy put the absolute beating on me. I'm not gonna lie to you. After losing to this so-called mutant pig, I decided I obviously needed more training and I obviously needed to get better. Yes, don't get me wrong, I was getting a little bit more progressive and I was progressing along my training regimens, but it was obvious that I still wasn't even ready, so I had to fight some normal people first, and on day 35, or at least all the way up until day 35, I finally had a chance at fighting a new person. This was Fred Jetley, and he didn't stand an absolute chance. And after this fight, it would be pretty surprising, because I would see somebody that I recognized not only in my nightmares, but also in real life. Someone that I saw, that I witnessed, kill my father. This person had a red glowing eye, and honestly, I asked about who he was, but even the answers were so minimal. All the way up until day 38, I continued training and, eating food and working, but I took on my next underground fight, and frankly, this one was down to the wire. I thought there was a high likelihood that I could actually win, but unfortunately, my cardio seemed to be a little bit behind this guy, maybe because of my volume or the output that I was doing, but I would just lose, just barely, and I realized that I probably should go back to the regular fighting with more or less the regular league. But that wasn't the end of me doing stuff with the underground league. I just knew I had to take a break, and I had to wear off this concussion, especially on day 38. On day 38, I got another KO, but this didn't really feel that fulfilling. The person that I faced in this league, it was kind of like a tune-up fight. I'm not gonna lie to you, it was a very easy one, but that was beyond the point. Because I knew I had to transcend, I had to get better, and fighting these people that were not on my level and then fighting people that were way above my level, it just didn't help the way I thought it would, and I just had to get better in the gym. I didn't want to take any shortcuts, I didn't want to do any of that. But I decided, you know what, let me go and handle what I need to handle with my training and also everything else I have to do. That would include meeting a couple new people, kind of like this actual acupuncturist that I would end up meeting. And that would be pretty beneficial in the near future as well. But that's beyond the point, because on day 44, I finally felt ready to step out into the underground fighting once again. And I would end up getting the finish in the 4th round. At the end of the day, I was actually feeling a lot more like a fighter recently than ever before. It seems like my game has been leveling up, and I seem to get a good grasp of what I need to do in a lot of my fighting and a lot of the techniques I actually need to utilize to win some of these fights. On day 45, I would get an easy KO in my next league match, and I would actually run into someone by the name of Roy. He would talk about how that I'm unstoppable, and that I'm this, and I'm that, and he really messed with me. And I was like, you know what, that's great. Like, we definitely need to hang out or train sometime, and, anything that we gotta do, because shoot, hey, you seem like a real man's man, so I need to make sure to stay in touch with this dude Roy. But that's beyond the point right now. I just think Roy is a pretty good guy. You see, all the way up until day 50, I was benefiting quite a bit, and frankly, I felt like I was on a whole nother level. But every time I feel like this, I take on my next fight, which ironically enough would be Roy Jackson, and I would think that this guy looks pretty familiar. I'm not 100% sure, but he looks pretty familiar. And I would take him on, and, well, let's just say it would definitely not go exactly how I would want it to go. I mean, the dude would end up KOing me in the 3rd round, giving me a bitter loss and obviously a new effect, and basically giving me a concussion and a broken arm. Nothing very good, I'm not going to lie to you, but stuff that I can definitely get treated, and hopefully I'll feel better pretty soon, or at least in the near future. I took about 2 days of recovery and then more or less took on Roy Jackson again, but in the rookie league. But this time around, this was my territory and I had all the advantages, and I was able to take him down, not with no trouble, but at least less trouble than I thought I would be in. Now, not only was I now in 5th place in the rookie league, I was also now learning the way of the tiger, which was definitely the next step in my training. But obviously, I spent the next 5 or so days continuing my rigorous training regimen so I could keep up and transcend even further, because I wanted to really run house on the rookie league, and on day 57, I would have my very next fight. So yeah, I think it would be an understatement to say that it definitely did not go very well. I mean, I got my ass beat. I'm not gonna lie to you. I thought with the new style that I inherited and I was now on felt like a different level, it felt like I was ready. It felt like I could really take on this next challenge, but it obviously wasn't true. The way of the tiger wasn't the way for me, or at least just not yet. It seemed that I only knew the base levels of the way of the tiger, and I definitely needed to learn a lot more before actually winning at the very top of the heap. So I would continue this vicious cycle of training, working out, hanging out with Roy, sparring, all the way up until about day 62, where I would actually take on Roy Jackson once again, but obviously in the underground type of league. I'm honestly not sure 100% what it was, but I came in with vicious intent. I'm not sure if maybe I just leveled up compared to this guy that was in front of me, but I knew I needed to get a finish, and I knew I needed to show what I was really capable of, especially if I was going to figure out who that guy in the cloaked or the cloaked kind of clothing and the red eye truly were. So I got the win against Roy Jackson this time around, and I did it in convincing fashion. Shoot, only even 3 days later on day 65, I was already taking on my next underground challenge. I knew I wanted to get stronger and knew I needed to get better, so I needed to take on some of these higher level opponents, and I was able to drain this guy's stamina to a pulp. I was able to outlast him, and I was able to beat the absolute hell out of him, and frankly, I made it look pretty easy. The best I've ever looked and the best I've ever felt in a fight, bar none. And it ended obviously with a KO and or a stoppage in the 3rd round. I ended up deciding that I would continue on with these ultimate fights, so I actually stayed away from the Rookie League for now and took on my next challenger in the ultimate fights on day 68. And honestly, on paper, it looked like I was a bit outclassed, but I had to see what was he really made of in an actual fight. And frankly, I looked pretty good. I was able to drain his stamina extremely quick, and I was able to more or less get him on the ground early in the 2nd round, which was definitely a plus, but it would be an absolute travesty to end up losing to a guy like this, who I was obviously quicker, faster, and also had way better stamina than, even though he was a little bit more brutish and you could tell that he had some crazy punching power. But luckily enough, I was able to get a finish actually in the 4th round, and that was a pretty quick finish in my opinion, but I still took quite a bit of damage. The training continued until day 71, and I would end up taking a really close loss in the ultimate fighting. And this was a bit demoralizing, I'm not gonna lie, and really sucked, because in my opinion, I really thought I could have that fight, and a couple mistakes led me to obviously losing. I knew what I was capable of, so the fact that I lost here really tore me down just a little bit, and I knew I just had to be better, especially on fight day. I don't know what it was, but I felt a little sluggish. Maybe I sneezed a couple times, the night before or the morning of, but nonetheless, no excuses can be made. I gotta be better next time. After a couple more days, and on day 72, I decided to take on another fight in the Rookie Fight League, but it didn't go well. I'm not gonna lie, my stamina issues were not the issue at all. It was really my durability, and I was falling behind. Really falling behind, especially on durability in that phase of the fighting game. And it was obvious that I just could not take a punch the way I wanted to, and I really needed to learn how to react and actually dodge as much as possible and not get completely and utterly destroyed, especially when I'm getting punched and basically punched down the way I have been. I need to learn how to roll with the punches a little bit more and at least counter strike when I'm actually getting dealt all of these punches, but that's beyond the point right now. I knew I needed to lock in and more or less get back to my training. I trained like an absolute madman until day 78, and they actually gave me this random jobber. I'm not gonna lie, this was somebody that I was obviously better than, and somebody I obviously was in there to beat. So it was no surprise when I came in there and I was able to beat him pretty easily. Not only was I able to outlast him, I was able to throw more volume than him, and also at the end of the day, I was more durable than him. So I knew I was at the point where I was kind of making the circle back, trying to climb back that ladder, because I was the gatekeeper and I didn't want to be no gatekeeper. So I needed to step my game up. Luckily, I was able to get a win, but I knew that the next couple fights meant a lot to my current position. After training all the way up until day 84, I got right back into the ring and got right back into doing things in the Rookie League, and I took on a brand new opponent. With a name like Dragon Ray, you would think I would stand no chance at all, but honestly, this was probably one of my easier fights in a very long time. I've kind of got a strategy down with just the way I fight now, and I'm gonna be honest, I'm getting better and better. I mean, the guy was already on his last legs going into the second round, and I continued the onslaught, and it felt like I was just outpacing him, and I was kind of beating him pretty bad. I almost gassed myself out at one point, but luckily enough, in the third round, I was able to recover and get the finish that I wanted. But I gotta be a little careful. When I start putting volume on people like that, there's a good chance that I may even gas myself out, so I definitely need to be a little bit better with my energy consumption. But I continued on with more or less learning and also just getting better at different techniques throughout this time as well. On day 85, I went after a loss that I had a while back. I knew I had to take on this mutant pig once again, and with my new strength, with my new abilities, and honestly my ability to fight, I knew I would have more stamina, more energy, and just the ability to chop the legs out from underneath this guy and eventually get the finish. Don't get me wrong, it was a pretty intense fight, especially when you have these or those mutant genes running through that guy's veins. It honestly felt a little unfair, as if he was injecting steroids straight up you know where. And the fight was a pretty difficult one, but I got multiple knockdowns. It's actually kind of ironic, especially because it felt like this fight was going to go on for forever. But every time I felt like I would knock him down and it was finally over and I finished him, he would get back up. Like I said, he must be pumping something else through his veins to be able to do all of these things. But luckily enough, about 5-ish rounds in, I was finally able to get the finish. And, well, I was kind of congratulated, more or less, by doing it. But, you know, at least maybe in my own head, I was congratulated by it. But they were talking about how they more or less would have just jumped the dude. So that really doesn't really matter. But still, nonetheless, it doesn't matter. All through the days up until day 88, I continued more or less my journey to being a pro fighter, but then I ran across something interesting. Someone that I actually met before, and he was talking about how, more or less, that someone had a bit of a note for me. It was a weird note, something about blowing up a bridge. Don't know how you even get the artillery power for that, but that's beyond the point. I needed to absolutely stop this, or else. Frankly, I needed to get it done now, so I told them, give me the laser back or else, and I was basically talking about how they need to give me the cat food too. And this guy said, well, I'm gonna take you on, and I was like, shoot, man, I mean, I don't got a choice, so I'll do what must be done. But luckily enough, I was actually able to take this mutant down. The weird part is, how am I able to take down someone like this, but I can't even be a world champ? Nonetheless, I mean, obviously I can't really do much with this laser, so I decided I would return it to the dock. I mean, at the end of the day, I can't harbor a laser anyways. I mean, what am I gonna do with it on my own home? But then I would get a message. It said that they were going to kill my cat. They said if I didn't bring the laser to them, that something bad, truly bad, would happen. That they would off my cat. This was some serious stuff. Some very serious stuff. They said, no laser, no cat. Do you want to see your cat alive? You better come to the rooftop with the laser. And I was pissed. I was pissed. But then when I went up there, it seemed like I wasn't even strong enough. Whatever this deer, creature, antler person was, I just wasn't strong enough. He called me weak and I told my cat to hang on, that I'd save them eventually, but I had to leave. Luckily enough, these people weren't very smart. Well, obviously they weren't really people, but they weren't very smart in general. So they kind of just waited there. And yeah, don't know any explanation for that, but they literally just, stood there like absolute idiots. But that's completely beyond the point, because I knew I just had to train to get strong enough, get to the point where I was able to actually take on that deer person. Over the next 6 or so days, I went through the training arc of a century. We're talking about the normal training I normally do to even taking on Ninja Turtles alike. I knew I had to get stronger. I knew I had to get better. And if this deer antler dude was going to give me the time to actually eclipse his strength, I was going to absolutely take it. My winning streak continued on day 95, and I just couldn't do anything wrong at this point. But at the same time, I knew my cat was sitting there all alone. But I knew I couldn't do anything about it. I was too weak, way too weak. And I kind of had to just let them do what they could do, at least for the moment. But I'm gonna be honest, my cat is more badass than me. So he's probably currently wishing that he didn't steal my cat, because my cat eats all my food. All of it, gone, in an instant. I've never seen that cat without my food in his stomach. Frankly, probably for the best that the cat is over there, but at least the cat gave me a goal to achieve. Do I even like that cat? Where did that cat even come from? Well, that's a thought for another day. On day 96, I actually got a win over Gordon, and this pushed me up the rankings to actually 3rd place. I was making crazy progress, and eventually I got, the compliments from the coach saying that I made it look really simple, but I'm gonna be honest, it wasn't very simple. And I was asking him why he looks upset, and he says that he has a problem with debts, and he owes a ton of money. Money? Like, what are you even talking about? Like, what did you even get yourself into talking about money? And he was talking about how he needed so much, and that maybe I could help him out. And I was like, what do you mean take a nap? Like, I don't even really want to do all that. Like, and I was pretty mad. I was like, you know what? I just climbed the ranks. And I told him, there's no way. I'm trying to make a name for myself. And he told me to go talk to Mick and tell him everything. And I'm sure he could figure something out. So I visited Mick, and he told me some interesting stuff. And he asked me about me struggling, but I told him about Silver, that he owes money to this gangster or some gangster. And he talks about how he's known that forever, that he used to be the champ. And it actually was kind of crazy, because he started talking about all this other stuff, about a medallion, about my father's death, and that it was small to have its, that like I was too small to have its power, and basically this medallion was insane, that nobody knows where it is or where it came from or anything, but it helps awaken infinite power inside the person who wears it. Which I was like, no way this even exists, like this can't be real, Unc. But he was telling me, nah, it's real, nephew, it really is real. And I just sat there listening for a while, and it really just took my breath away. It was insane. After talking to Mick, it would eventually lead me back to Silver, and he would talk about how he doesn't have the medallion, that he gave it to Dawn to cover the debts, and basically said that he just gave away a magical artifact to some gangster, which was absolutely insane to me, but that didn't matter at this point. I need to go talk to the Dawn. And of course, that's exactly what I did. But I got some information that I didn't want to hear, something about a professional card, or at least a professional license, so I needed to get even better if I truly wanted to get that medallion back. Leading up until day 99, I continued training and got my another official knockout in the 3rd round, leading me to actually becoming the 2nd ranked in the rookie league. I knew that I was just this close, that I needed maybe 1 or 2 more fights and I'd be number 1. But my time was soon to be running out. I knew I had a lot to do, and I had more training to accomplish. My sparring was becoming more and more of a routine as time would go on, and before I knew it, it was already day 100. And toward the end of day 100, everything felt like a routine. The working, the eating, the sleeping, the training, the fighting, all of it felt like I was born for this. Of course, I wanted to be a champion by day 100, but that was not the case. But after 100 days, I climbed the ranks of 2 different organizations, found out many things I didn't know about my father's past, and on top of that, I had a goal set in mind, and that goal was to be the best and maybe save my cat. But I hope you all enjoyed 100 days of Punch Club, and frankly enough, I apologize that it took so long for this video to come out, but I hope y'all enjoyed nonetheless, and I hope all y'all have an amazing day. Later.